the following and offer it with some degree of confidence. And you're probably convinced right now that you were right. And you don't get in this room unless you're very bright, very accomplished, very intelligent. That being said, I would not take your definition of causality as an executive and act on it. But you see, we can all come up with a definition of cause. So that's the kind of thing that I want to talk about, and I want to talk about from the viewpoint of my world. And what I mean by a world, I want to use this definition by Howard Becker. Why? Because he's known as the Richard Feynman of sociology. Richard Feynman is a god in my world. I hope that you know who he is, okay? Because, in case you haven't heard this, you will hear this material again. Okay, if you've been in the military, you know what that phrase means. Okay, so here's how he defined a world. A world consists of real people who are trying to get things done, largely by getting other people to do things that will assist them in their project. The resulting collective activity is something that perhaps no one wanted, but is the best everyone could get out of this situation, and therefore what they all, in effect, agreed to. Okay? Some people don't understand that the job of a leader is to do that. Okay? It is not to get everything that you want. There's some people in this town who don't get that. But you have real work to do. So my bosses told me, they said, don't worry about it. There's only two things that you have to know, really. There's actually kind of three. One is, starts with the leadership. Two, leaders develop an organization. Three, you take care of your people in the fullest sense, and they'll take care of the job. So, who I'm concerned about today is you. I'm concerned about everybody, but this is about you, because I want to know who helps you. Because if you don't do it, who will? Okay? The deck plate person has very, very little control. Okay? You don't really have control, but you have more influence. That's how I think about this thing called learning. So, over here, why? The why. All right, so a few things. See, I have my procedures. I'm a nuke. I got to have procedures. I don't follow them verbatim, but I have to refer to them. Because you talked about all these kind of things. You talked about social relationships are dynamic. You talked about stakeholder thought processes, what they might look like. You talked about, are people being treated right? Can industry lose a social license? That's happening to us. Okay? You've talked about, in the nuclear world, creating assumptions, we impair our ability to perceive risk. How about shared mental models? How about, what do you do really about the scientific method? Do we apply that? How do we understand the bigger picture in the ROI? Risk is future and data is the past. I love that. Of course, quantitative and qualitative data. Now, you see, I'm a heretic. As far as I'm concerned, quantitative data is simply data that is assigned a number and that is expressed with a confidence factor. Now, as far as I'm concerned, too, the different social sciences, the different sciences have different confidence formula. Okay? So I can have confidence in a sociologist's data if I understand how the confidence is established in it. But if all I know is chemistry, then my sole basis for proof is the proof that exists in the fraternity of chemists. Okay? So, but I've got to understand those kinds of things. So I heard a lot of those kind of things, and then I heard the fear of regulator prescribing detailed criteria for culture. And you'll forgive me if I silently guffawed, because my friends, the regulators, know that they may be expected to be the great father and mother and the protector of the world, but we don't have nearly that much influence. If anything, we kind of move the needle just a little bit about it, And basically, this is Earl's world, basically what we hope, and this is actually my kind of social Darwinism when it comes to our marketplace Darwinism, that the people who are really good, and I heard this from you, the problems from some of you, the problems with the small operators, the people who are really good understand that this is fundamentally about doing business. We do socially important work. The way I think about it is like this. I don't know if you've seen this. There's a series of commercials by General Electric now. I don't know if they're airing internationally. They just started a few months ago here in the U.S. And it's about this young man, Owen. He's graduated. He's a computer programmer, okay? And he's graduated, and Owen gets a job, okay? And he's going to work for GE as a programmer, Okay? And now his programming people, now, I don't know. Maybe they thought when I had a slide rule, I did slide rules and, all this kind of on my hip and everything. Maybe I looked kind of geeky at the time and still am. But, so programmers are kind of geeky. So his friends are coming in and go, oh, you got a job? And he goes, yeah, I'm going to work for GE. And they go, huh? Because in another one, the other guy is saying that he went to school with, yeah, I got a job too. I'm a programmer for this particular, app. And what I do is I put fruit hats on the top of cats. And everybody is wanting to go, oh, wow, man. And he's going, but I'm going to change the world. I'm with General Electric. And they go, oh, but did you see this watermelon on the cat's head? You see, we share that in common. What we do is either, to me, we sustain the fabric of society as it is today, and or we build the future society. And what turns me on, really, even at my age, though I can get real darn cynical from what I've seen, is we can build the future. And I think this is what this is about. How you're thinking, the things that we've talked about, and where today, I thought, well, gee, what's really happening? Yesterday I was saying, the story I'm telling you, I said, I heard a lot of data. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I heard a lot of different perspectives. And then today, because I'm wondering, where are these people coming from? Are they coming from the same world that I'm coming from? Because maybe I just don't understand. I got all these perspectives. And then today I start hearing some convergence. And I start hearing things like, hey, wait a minute. They use this word safety culture, and maybe that's not what we're talking about. There's no such thing as a safety culture. It's the organization. And then somebody starts saying, it really is a culture of safety. I'm concerned about knowing who are the best performers. So that's kind of the meandering stuff here. Actually, I'll tell you this. Deming said it, like he said a lot of things, and that is, he talked about strategic organizational learning this way. A healthy company is in an excellent position to improve and has the greatest obligation to improve. A company on the rocks can only think of survival. Well, okay, we've dealt with companies that are on the rocks, but that's not the point. If I'm going to create the future, if you're going to create the future, okay, it's those who are best equipped to survive and who are willing to take the risk to go beyond what is just in compliance, to go to this idea of excellence. So, I put this up here, a couple of data points, if you will, a recent study that was from OECD, and this is what they found. In looking at manufacturing and looking at services, a clear distinction. Very simply, and you see the blue line's the top line, the firms that learn best, they do the best job of diffusion of knowledge, perform the best. Okay? Oops. One more. Okay? You've probably also heard of this as the second one. Gallup, for years, has been looking at employee engagement. You've probably seen those studies. I think it's pretty significant if you haven't. 25 million people in 189 different countries, and overall, what they found was only 13% of the workers in the world are engaged. We're the best in the United States. I'm not going to go there. My wife is Canadian. We don't do that stuff. I got friends all over the world. But they say even if you look at the U.S., where is it? Maybe someplace in the 20% who are actually genuinely engaged. Then you've got like a small double digit of people who are actually trying to destroy the culture, destroy the organization, do it harm. And you got 63% of the people who are not engaged. They're just there. And you know why they're just there? Because that's the way management acts. Okay? That's the way management acts. I'm sorry, it's about you. If not you, who? Okay? And you know why primarily? It's because management doesn't have a clue about how work is really done. You've heard this phrase, but I haven't heard you use it. Work is imagined versus work is done. And there's only one way to understand how work is really done. Number one, you got to be willing to see it. Number two, you got to go to the deck plate. And you've talked about quantitative data. Man, my business, my world, 37 years of data, plant operation, all this kind of stuff. We actually have people, it's one of our problems. We now are in the generation of people who think that they can sit in the office in Atlanta and look at the quantitative data and write their findings before they get out to the field. I'm going to tell you what, that's not the way I learned the world. Until I go face to face and I talk to the operators, I talk to the mechanics, I walk the spaces, I talk to the engineers, I talk to the manager, I talk to everybody. I don't understand what's going on. And you can tell me till you're blue in the face. I simply don't believe you. Not that I don't trust you. But my experience is it is not either or. It is quantitative data plus qualitative data, because I could look at all the quantitative data all the time in the world, and I don't understand what it means until you tell me what it means in your life. So what I've got is a bunch of data here from different places in the world saying, hey, people are not engaged and we're not diffusing data. Is it 5 minutes? Okay, so I'm going to go several places quickly. I've gone on too much about this, but this is the experience in our world. Through organizational learning, we significantly increased the capacity factor of production, and we decreased these significant events. The way that we did this is by stopping to look at the worker and by looking at the overall system. Okay? That's how we did it. I have these just for illustration. The whole point that it begins with you, I've already said that. Okay, so we looked at 3 concepts, and this is what I believe you as leaders need to understand. The number one problem is you've got to start understanding mental models. That's it. And it's not one model. First of all, you got to challenge yourselves, okay, to look at what the models really are. I'll give you a quick example. There was an admiral who had a plant to start up. He asked me to come in, and he asked me to do something. It didn't make any sense to me. He says, help my managers learn their jobs. How do you do that? I mean, all these kind of people. But see, he was an admiral. What he knew was it wasn't the technical knowledge, it was the understanding how one another thought. Now, you want to know how to do that? It's really kind of simple. You go around and you have a conversation and say, tell me about your job. And you do it around, in my world, you do it around the technical artifact. You do it around their understanding of the plant and the operations. And they will start telling you stuff, and you go, tell me more about that, until the point that they go, is that what I really do? Or is that how I think I do it? And then you get to engage with each other and how they do things. And then somebody said this, the best thing I did after those one-on-one conversations and getting them to catch themselves and say, am I really thinking about that? Then I got them working together, and I did that primarily through emergency drills until they started understanding roles, responsibilities, relying on one another, things like that. So we worked on those kind of things. The next thing is what Feynman said in terms of organizational learning, okay? It's not really focusing on the content of learning, you as an executive, you as a senior manager, it's understanding the learning process, okay? How do I get to know is the thing. This is the next one, and just a few things and I'll be finished. And this is at the INPO headquarters. This is a marble pillar that is carved with the word excellence, and it's only half finished. The point is we set excellence as our goal, realizing we're never going to get there. But it doesn't stop us from trying. Okay? Excellence is never finished. This is strategic learning to me in its purest form. Someone said this, unless you learn to see, you will never learn. And I think about it as the executive intelligence system. You're the ones that make the difference. How is it that you know what's going on? I had it, my bosses would say, go find out about so-and-so. Even when I came to DOE, it was Admiral Watkins, he called us in 2 weeks after I got there and said, okay, you're my people. I got my managers, but you go find out and come back and tell me the story. What's the point? Oh, by the way, and how do you do that? Managers need simple guidelines. After 40-something years, this is the way I do assessments. I mean, I got all this stuff and everything, but I got 3 questions. What does good look like? You said that, Tracy. What does good look like? Okay? How are you doing? And how do you know? I can take those 3 questions at every level of the organization, starting at the board of directors, going to the deck plate of the person who is swabbing. I can ask those 3 questions, and I can provide you with a picture of what your organization looks like. Now, they're much more sophisticated tools and all that kind of stuff, but you got to start with the basics. And you have to start not with the presupposition that you know what good looks like, and that's the reason that your organization, your executive intelligence organization, cannot be part of the line. It reports to the person in charge. It is a separate operating function. It is a parallel system. It is an intelligence system that has no line responsibility because you can't do both jobs. It's a great training ground. That's my belief. And they've got to have special training. They've got to have all the technical training, but they've got to go beyond. We've got to have Tracy's, and we've got to have Sonia's, we've got to have Gary's. Okay? We've got to have that multidisciplined team. Otherwise, you can collect all the data in the world, but you don't know what it means. Because my whole purpose is what my bosses taught me a long time ago. You don't make decisions, son. They didn't call me son, but the point was, and I like that. I like that idea, because I could do it. My job is to go out and find out what's going on with a level of confidence, because I use multi-inquiry methods to go back to the boss and say, here's what's going on. That informs better decisions. You got to go see. You have to have a strategic approach. You have different tools. This is my strategic approach. You've seen some of it before. Is it true? No. Is it useful? Yes, I hope so. And that's very simple. I had a mathematician. I love it. I had my boss do work for me. Okay, he's an Air Force pilot, and I'm going to quit with this and one more. He's a mathematician, fighter jock, MIT ops researcher guy, you know, and during snow weather in Washington, we'd be working from our homes and we'd go, hey, let's do something on this kind of stuff. I love that kind of relationship, okay? And I said, okay, you know, I talk about this kind of stuff and I have these few equations, but you're the mathematician, because I had a physicist one time said, that's not a real equation. You missed the fundamental point. This basically says, okay, what I'm trying to do is increase mindfulness. I'm not worried about eliminating error. I don't mess with it at all. I want to increase mindfulness to notice and manage risk. I want to maximize the defense effectiveness. You know where that is. Okay? I want to understand how work is actually done. I want to understand the expectations surrounding work. And I want to align management and workers better and understanding how we actually do work. I want to build a resilient system. I'm bolstering resilience. I want to really get observations, insights, and lessons, which is a military term in case you haven't heard it, okay? And I don't want any negative consequences, okay? I just don't want bad stuff to happen. The good stuff will come along. That's basically what I do, because I go back to Feynman, and this is my belief. For successful technology, reality must take precedence over public relations, for nature cannot be fooled. I can't tell you how many times, I finish with this, something bad happens and the executive gets up and go, oh, well, we've got this, and we do all these kinds of things, and we believe in safety. Well, we're just going to fix the safety culture. Ladies and gentlemen, come on. I didn't get off a turnip truck. We know better than that. You don't do that. You change the way you do business. Well, first of all, it's really bad. You know, the first thing that happens, you change leaders. You want to change the culture? You don't change the culture. You get in with a leader who appreciates and understands the culture, okay? And those people develop trust, loyalty, and together you start doing business better. This is what I believe. This has been my experience. Whether it means anything to you or not, you can tell me. By the way, maybe you might answer that question, because I wonder how many people made predictions. I wonder how many people got a little tickle, you know, in your system when you found that your prediction might be true. And this is, I told John Northington, I didn't realize, I was looking at this the other day when I put slides together, and I looked at my wife and I said, you know, I didn't realize how much I look now like the old guy at the board, except he has a bigger nose and I have more hair. Okay, so thank you for your patience. I went a little bit over, and so where do we go? Oh, is that, okay. Okay, you want to do that? Oh, okay. Anybody got any questions? Testimonials? Did anybody make a prediction? Oh, is a question? Yeah.
So we've sat through 2 days of these discussions. They've been fascinating. And, you know,
I apologize. Could you speak up a little bit? I really wasn't kidding about the ears.
So we've been 2 days here, fascinating
yes,
discussions about risk and reward. So one of the things that I thought has not been discussed is, what is the role of the regulator in social license and legitimacy? And I think that that's sort of been overlooked.
Okay.
Because it's sort of you're sort of viewed as a one-way street. But if you think about it, I had a job once where I was sent to work for some admiral and on an accident commission. And we used to have airplane accidents. And I said, Admiral, okay, I'm going to send the report to the fleet. He said, oh, make sure you send out all the data. I said, well, are you sure? He says, yeah, we're really not that smart. We just think we're smart. There's a lot of smart guys in the fleet. Let them look at all the data.
Good. Okay.
And it's very interesting. We issue regulations, but we don't issue the data. So I think one of the things the regulators need to think about is, how do they enhance their legitimacy?
Okay.
And the first thing, put out the data. Let everyone understand how you got from X to Y. And is you can see a lot of pushback sometimes because the industry looks at it and says, what are these guys thinking? And so that's sort of my recommendation. Open the system up. Let everybody look at it. It doesn't need to be a secret.
Two responses, if I may, and I basically agree with you. Two responses, if I may. Number one, going back to my commercial nuclear world, and actually who I am now, is I want to respond to your question, and I agree with your point, but my initial response is, as far as I'm concerned, sooner or later, the best companies will dominate the industry. The bad performers, one way or another, will be weeded out. And that was the situation. There used to be maybe 100 operators in the commercial nuclear world in the United States, okay? And now there may be about 45. And guess what? Through that consolidation, they bought out the poorer performers and all this kind of stuff, okay? And actually, this recent study came out of Berkeley that said of those large corporations that consolidated, they have actually demonstrated an increase, that big chart that I showed you, of 10% better performance, okay? Primarily, these were economists of all people who were doing the study at Berkeley, said primarily those improvement results, even experienced by the biggest, were as a result of a function of learning and sharing knowledge. Okay, that part to go to. Now, the second point I want to make. Yeah. Second point I want to make, and then you go back, and or whoever wants to do, is I want to say, okay, back in my DOE hat, God knows we weren't perfect, okay, because we got people trying to discover, you know, multiverse and dark matter, and I don't even know what that is, but I had to interview them. I did, okay, but is our position at the secretary level, we did independent oversight for the secretary. All of our reports that were non-classified. Well, first, anything that was non-classified was public, and if it had classified information, the classified was scrubbed, and the information that could be made available was made available, and we published the methodology. Because to me, without saying how we measured, the methods that we used, and the basis for deciding what we decided, the report itself is worthless. Now, back to you.
Well, I think Duke Industries is a little unique. But think about
okay.
we also live in a very political world, right?
Yeah.
So, somebody produces a movie called Gasland. Some GS9 from the survey could get up and say, you know, that's a pile of junk. But we live in a political world, so the government stands back. People say all kinds of crazy things, very influential. But you don't hear from the regulators then. You don't hear from the authorities on, you know, what is the real nature of the science behind what's being said and what's shaping public opinion. And the longer that goes on, it kind of even undermines the regulators' role. And so I just think the regulators also have an important function to participate in the broader debate.
Got it. We could have another discussion, which I'd be happy to, about the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and how they do, but I will, if I may go to someone else, with, again, this is my opinion, is that, okay, I got it. Okay, but you're in this job because you're big girls and boys. Okay? That's what we live with. I can't change the people on the Hill. Okay? I can't change the funding. Okay? So the only thing that I can do and sleep at night is saying, what can I affect? I got you. But I'm talking to you as leaders. If you want to be in this business, okay, ask yourself, what can I change? What can I influence? And as long as I'm trying to solve the Congress, and I'm trying to solve the legislation, and I'm trying to solve all these kind of things, I'm whistling in the wind. Now, again, this is Earl. I'm taking the latitude of a retirement platform to say, what can you change? I don't really care what you can't change. I defy you. You know, I bet you, I hope you will go out and say, I'm going to change something. Okay? That's what my bosses taught me. That's why they created the nuclear navy and the nuclear industry, right, Admiral? That's how we did it. Okay. I don't have any opinions, of course, do I? Another question.
I'm Bjørnar Heide from the Norwegian Petroleum Safety Authority. Yeah. I want to thank you for your presentation. I think you've given me some real insight in how we in the Norwegian Petroleum Authority can move along with risk management. I think in many ways we are doing quite a lot of good work on risk management, but we have we have also been criticized for becoming a little bit stale in how we do our risk management. So we're now in a starting process of trying to revitalize risk management, and we're still really searching for how to go forward. So I think those three questions you had, I think that could be a really good starting point for us, because our kind of experience is that if you do an audit of a company, they often become quite defensive, and they're like checking that you are. They can say yes, we are compliant to all these regulations, but I think maybe these questions that you said just open, like asking more open questions. What does good look like to you, because you're the ones doing it, and like you said, how are you actually doing compared to what good is, and of course, how do you know how you do it? So my question is really, can you give some more examples, practical examples of how you did that and what you have seen, and just some strategies for how to go forward?
I told John Northington, don't get me into telling these stories. Yeah, well, okay, yeah, okay. So more recently, I'll make this quick. There was a facility that is very important in the defense world that commissioned what they called an independent safety culture assessment, okay? And they had a PhD do it, to my PhD friends in the room, okay? That was a PhD engineering or something like that, but a PhD ran it. Obviously, it must be good. And they said they took the nuclear industry traits, okay? Took the nuclear industry traits, and they used, multiple methods, quantitative, qualitative. And oh, by the way, they created their own questionnaire. Okay, now see, I'm a little bit different, because if I want a questionnaire to look at organizations done, I go to Tracy's and Sonia's and other people that I know that actually know that stuff. Okay, I mean, that's just what I do. See, I worked with DOE, the brightest scientists in the world. All I had to do is pick up a phone and I say, where's the world's expert on X, Y, and Z? I didn't go to an engineer and ask them to diagnose me, okay? But they did. Okay, now I'll finish the example this way. So they came back, had this beautiful thing, and they said, so we've come back with the idea that the managers have a wonderful safety culture, and there is a big gap between their perception of culture and the perception of the workforce. And so the recommendation is we change the perception of the workforce to be that of the managers. Now, how does that relate to you? What did good look like to them? Good looked like the opinion of managers. Well, they don't get it. They will never get it. Now, my solution in my world is, okay, when I find that, I get rid of them. Okay, we have significant emotional events to change the mindset of management. Okay, because the employees, they're generally going to follow along, and actually they got some real darn good ideas, we know that. Okay, but management who's got that mindset has the wrong mind. There's good mindsets, there's shades and all that kind of stuff, but they don't get it. Okay, now that's kind of an extreme. I don't know if that helps or not, but I'm trying to understand. I'm first of all trying to understand, just me, how do they think? What do they really give importance to? Okay, and give me an example. And if they give me a cost-cutting example, I know that they don't get it. Okay, all right. But I had a laboratory director, a nuclear physicist. We were talking about another really said, wonderful, wonderful guy, very well respected. I knew all that. And he said, we were talking about this kind of stuff, and he says, oh, well, I've got all my safety, my slips, trips, and falls kind of stuff, and I'm most concerned because they're up north about, ice and snow. He was on top of it. And I said, great, okay, good. I can tell you some good worker safety things because that's not what this is about. He said, it's not. I said, no. He said, I thought it was. I said, how did you know? He says, well, my safety staff told me. That's that. I said, well, it's not. Here's where it comes from. I talked about the academic work and all the science that went into it. Talked about INPO. Talked about NASA. He sat back and he said, He said, you're telling me that this really is about how we manage our laboratory. And I said, yeah, you got it. Because he wanted to know. The staff had told him, okay, and he did the best he could listening to the staff, but he asked a technical staff about an organizational issue. I don't know if that answers your question or not. I mean, that's just the example. So that's how I think. How do you think? That's what I want to know, is how you think. Yes, ma'am? Or do you think we're finished?
I don't think you're ever finished, okay?
I said we collectively.
We collectively, you know, we're going to wrap up here.
Let's do that.
But the world, according to Earl, was a great recap.
You're very
okay?
kind. Thank you.
You caught, did you guys realize he actually did the highlight reel for both days? Okay, it was all in there. And at some point I was like, my job here is done because Earl has done it for me.
You all did
and that
it
is
yourselves.
great. That is great.
Thank you.
I really want to thank Earl. Thank you very, very much. So we're in the witching hour now. We're closing up shop here. We have just a few minutes left. I'd like to hit a couple of highlights. He did actually a great job of encapsulating the 2 days. And I'm going to invite Brian up here before we go. He has a few things to say. If you would join me as the event. Come on up here, Brian. Oh yeah, that's true. So we're gonna come over here and take some chairs, just like when we started yesterday. So while he's miking, I'm gonna start a couple of highlights here. All right, maybe take a load off and sit down for the first time. All right, so just to remind you guys, yesterday we got started with Ian Thompson, and he had a couple. There were words I heard over and over again that we all heard, and he started this. He talked about building credibility, legitimacy, and having trust. You know what word came up over and over again? Trust, okay? Throughout the whole 2 days, that word came up a bunch of times. We heard that even from our friend Bud Darr when he was talking about cruise ships. Here's something I heard from Robin West that I loved and I wrote down. Seek active performance rather than reactive compliance. I thought that was great from a man who's really seen, the regulatory community, regulated community from a totally different lens. We had Francis Lakey and David Michener talking about how we need experience. Training is another word I heard over and over again. Teamwork was another one. So we've got the same themes coming out all of the sessions for each of the days. Even in the data one, I heard the same thing in the data section. And that gets us to today. We had some great conversations this morning with session 4. Carlos, I like the one point in particular. He said, we're going to execute an enforcement policy that encourages learnings and capability building. So he's going for the carrot rather than the stick. I think that's something we all would prefer to do. Nobody likes being hit with a stick, but we all like to eat the carrot. So something Tony said earlier, I love this phrase, I can't even say that word. You know what I'm saying. Consciously competent, okay? Even though I can't say that word with any competency. Where people have had training and they're thinking actively about their safety, okay? That was a good key takeaway here. So these themes came out in and out through the last 2 days, and I think Earl did a nice job summarizing, but I'd also like to remind you, I asked Dan Vergano a question about engaging and what we could do in terms of public trust, I guess, both in the regulated side and with us being the regulator. And he said, engage truthfully and engage early. And I think that's a good takeaway that we started with in the very beginning with what Ian said. So these themes came out throughout, and Gary Jobson had some really great, I liked integrity and loyalty. Did you enjoy his talk? I enjoyed his talk.
I did, yes.
Yeah, and I didn't have to be a sailor, and I really, really enjoyed what he had to say there. So I hope that as we go, everybody will kind of reflect. It's easy to leave a conference like this and then say, it was a great conference, I really enjoyed it, I'll see you next time. But the question that was posed from the audience that said, how do we continue the collaborative dialogue here, is something we really need to think hard about, okay? We think about it a lot and how to collaborate with the other regulators. We think a lot about how to have a much more conducted, or, you know, working cooperatively versus that adversarial in the 11th hour. Safety isn't where we need it yet, but we can get there. And we're all showing a commitment here that we want to get there. So with that, I'd love to hear your thoughts as we're summarizing. Any parting shots that you have? I'm too close to him, clearly. It's my mic.
Hey, well, thanks, Allison. And yeah, I won't try to re-summarize because I think Allison did a very good job. And Earl, that was probably the most energetic and thought-provoking summary I've ever seen for a two-day conference. So I really want to thank you for keeping the energy levels up and actually giving us a charge. You know, what can we change? It's very powerful. You know, I did write down the themes, and you just really summarized most of them. But as you asked, and you hit them all. Good job. But leadership and engagement of the employees and organizational culture versus safety culture, all of that, you did a great job. But there was one I missed, and that's how hard it is to work for an admiral. Thank you for bringing that up. I had no idea, but it does give me more appreciation for the hard work that the staff has done, particularly those in the white shirts out here that have been, put this conference together, and Allison for moderating. And my biggest worry now is people are going to realize what a good moderator she is, and she's going to go and become a talk show host or something.
No, that will not happen.
But she did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
I'd give her a round of applause
Thank
for
you.
pulling this off. I really want to compliment all of you. And just looking around the room here, this is very low attrition for a two-day conference.
Mm-hmm.
Typically the second day it drops off, and the afternoon of the second day it really drops off, and then there's only a few people left typically at the end. But look at this. I think it's pretty close to 85% of what we started out with, and that's extraordinary. I would really ask for your feedback. We